Question comes from Madam Marina Berlingueri from Italy on behalf of the group of the Socialists, Democrats and Greens. Marina.
Grazie Presidente, Sua Eccellenza, signor Presidente Higgins. I tempi che stiamo vivendo ci hanno fatto capire che per contrastare l'obiettivo di imporre un assetto mondiale basato su rapporti di forza militari ed economici, noi dobbiamo favorire un'alleanza globale che definisca in modo più efficace nelle sedi multilaterali principi e soluzioni condivise. Le chiedo quindi, Presidente, quali sono le nuove azioni e le nuove strade che il Consiglio d'Europa può intraprendere per rinnovare e rafforzare il suo ruolo, ma più in generale anche il ruolo della dimensione multilaterale nel realizzare un'alleanza globale che sostenga diritti umani, pace e democrazia. Grazie.
Thank you, Marina. Next question comes from Marina Valentina Martinez Ferro from Spain, and she speaks on behalf of the EPP group. Marina.
Thank you and welcome to this Assembly of the Council of Europe, Mr. President Higgins. Le haré la pregunta en castellano porque sé que lo habla estupendamente, al igual que las otras dos lenguas oficiales de su país, el gaélico y el inglés, como nos ha mostrado hoy aquí, dando un excelente ejemplo de convivencia e inteligencia, algo propio de las sociedades plurilingües. Me encantaría saber cómo lo han conseguido este respeto en Irlanda, sobre todo a nivel educativo, porque podría ser muy útil para España. Pero hago la pregunta en nombre de mi grupo, así que me ceñiré a lo convenido. Ya que tienen el diálogo entre las autoridades irlandesas y británicas en marcha, ¿qué podría hacer el Consejo de Europa como ayuda adicional que contribuya a un acuerdo pronto y definitivo? Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Maria. The third question on behalf of the political groups comes from Mr. John Howell from the United Kingdom, and John speaks on behalf of the European Conservatives.
Thank you, Mr. President, for attending the funeral of Queen Elizabeth. If you and I can reach agreement on the Northern Ireland Protocol, how inherently strong do you think the relationship between our two countries is, and what do you think that will mean for tackling the complacency that there is here within the Council of Europe, together?
Thank you, John. And the fourth question on behalf of the political groups comes from Madam Ingvild Weltrus Torsvik from Norway on behalf of the group of the Liberals and Democrats in Europe. Ingvild, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Digital technologies play a central role in the functioning of our societies. They offer new opportunities for our democracies, but they also pose new risks to human rights. Under the current European Data Protection Framework, the Irish Data Protection Commission is tasked with ensuring that the biggest technology companies comply with European data protection rules, as these companies are headquartered in Ireland. However, the Irish Data Protection Commission has been publicly criticised for lax or insufficient enforcement against said companies. My question is what the Irish authorities are doing to ensure that Ireland has an independent and effective data protection regulation, and which mechanisms will be put in place to ensure proper functioning.
Thank you so much, Ingvild. And now the last question on behalf of the political groups comes from your compatriot, Mr. Thomas Pringle from Ireland, and he speaks on behalf of the Unified European Left. Thomas?
Council of Europe. I would like to take this opportunity, if I may, to thank you for your kind words in relation to the terrible tragedy in Creeslaw last Friday. It meant a lot to the people of Creeslaw and Donegal to know that people were standing with them at their time of need, so thank you for that. Ireland has suspended the operation of the Council of Europe agreement on the abolition of visa for refugees while we hold the presidency of the Council of Europe. Do you believe that that is an appropriate measure in response to the refugee crisis caused by the war in Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Mr. President, we have communicated already the themes of these 5 questions, so they are quite different, but I'm quite sure that you will be able to give a comprehensive reaction to this. You have the floor.
In relation to the first question, in relation to the future of Europe, I have in the remarks I made stressed the importance of the street. I think parliamentarians are very important, and parliamentarians are just sometimes I regard it as the first point of criticism, but I think there is a need for a transparency in policy making, a transparency in discussion and in discourse. And I think, therefore, we should really, been speaking about derechos humanos or human rights, whatever, that we should really be speaking about having, as I said, associations of the Council of Europe that are able to give details to schools of what discussions are going on about both your committees and your plenary sessions. The second question about it is mi compañera de España, is in relation to my dear friend from Spain. I should say that first, if I'll allow the question on language, the issue in the Irish case, remember, is that our language having been proscribed, not allowed to be spoken for quite a while, it became a huge importance in relation to the establishment of our state. And our issue now is not the knowledge of the language, but is issue in getting people to use it. And this is expanding among the younger in particular. One time, I think it might have been, we were talking about compulsory Irish, people thought that it was a kind of an authoritarian conservative agenda. It doesn't carry that anymore. It's very cool to speak Irish now among young people, and you'll find it in clubs and cities and so forth. And that is important, but the important part about it as well is to have a commitment to it. Our European minister sets a great example to everybody in the use of Irish, but it's very important that at the levels of the public service, particularly at the senior levels, it be used as much as possible. To our friends in the United Kingdom, it says that it was an honour to attend the remembrance service in Belfast when I had the opportunity of exchanging words with King Charles III, whom I knew as Prince Charles and with whom I had many good conversations. I think really, as indeed I had with this Queen Elizabeth II, who in fact both their family have had a deep concern that the peace would sustain in Ireland, and had patience, and in events that we shared, in particular when I returned, the first Irish head of state to return the visit in 2014, replying in response to her visit in 2011, was enormously helpful. The atmosphere, I think, the truth of it is, there's the same amount of investment between the United Kingdom and Ireland and the United Kingdom. How many our people are regular in contact with each other. And I think the atmosphere at present is beginning to look more positive in relation, and I'm very pleased with that, as will everybody, both people who are workers and business people and whatever. And I'm quite hopeful. In relation to our friend from Norway, in relation to technology, when I was teaching sociology, I was speaking about, if you like, the social impact of technology. It was a very old topic when we were teaching. But you've asked me a very specific question, and I want to answer it very directly. And it is that I think the independent commissioner in relation to privacy in digital might have been slow in getting off, but I was so in the report from government. There's an increase in both staff and about 23 million in resources, and the result has been, in fact, that the total number of fines is about 650 million. There has been fines against Facebook, against Meta, and there's been another 60 different warnings sent out and so forth. So I think it has gathered force, and it will benefit from the new resources. The Macara, Thomas Pringle, Viachasaram, level pairs, it is very. I'm a former minister for the Gaeltacht with responsibility for the Irish language and Gaeltachts, and I just think what is important about the tragedy and why I will be going there tomorrow is very, very much as a small community. So literally everybody who is lost and anybody who's injured will be known to everybody else. I think it is something we will move past, and I think that the Irish community all over the island are responding. I might say in relation to the previous question I was asked, one of the warmest messages I received yesterday was messages from King Charles, who sent me a very long message about all this. And we are, as President of Ireland, may I acknowledge all of the people who have sent messages expressing their solidarity with the people of Donegal.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you allow me,
I did ask a question. I didn't answer Deputy Pringle's question, which was just it. I'll answer it very like this. We had a directive which has allowed us, we have 50,000 Ukrainians, it will shortly be 60,000 in many cases, and that is under the temporary directive. But I assure you, I am very well aware that we have to learn too from our experience in direct provision. And it is very important that we in fact treat all migrants, and I think in many ways why you can say that we have obligations that arise from proximity, but those obligations in relation because it is the neighbours shouldn't in any sense take from our international obligations into any refugee from any circumstance of conflict.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry for interrupting you because you still have indeed to give this most important answer. We can take 3 more questions. Because then we are running out of time. The first question will be from Fiona O'Loughlin, then from Lauren Nashka, and then from George Fox. Fiona O'Loughlin from Ireland.
Fáilte Oath Arash Uachtaráin, you're very welcome back to these hallowed halls where indeed you made your mark as a former member. Our sympathy and our solidarity go with you and through you to the people of Cresslog as you travel to sympathise with them. Thank you for your very insightful and inspirational words and for your reference to the high-level group report. We here in PACE absolutely believe that there is a political imperative for a reaffirmed, renewed, reinforced and strengthened Council of Europe, and that should be done through a 4th summit. We also believe that we need to look at a new generation of human rights. And can I ask you what themes you think that we should prioritise to make the Council of Europe more relevant and more responsive to those that we serve and, of course, the citizens that we represent, and to add to the beacon of hope that you mentioned. Gurv Mahagat.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Now I give the floor to Mr. Loring Naksa from Hungary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm right here behind you. Thank you for your speech. The cost of living crisis aggravated by the war in Ukraine and the energy sanctions hits hard also on our continent and economies and makes it inevitable for the European decision makers to revise plenty of our previous strategic decisions. In light of today's economic and political challenges, how do you assess the perspectives of green transition in Europe, with particular regard to the role of the non-renewable but still necessary fossil and nuclear energy production? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now the last question comes from George Fox from the United Kingdom. George, the floor is yours.
Can I, as a Scotsman, join in the warm welcome to you, President Higgins? This very afternoon in the House of Lords, we're debating the second reading of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. It's going to be opposed by people on all sides because of the threat it poses for conflict between the European Union and the United Kingdom. What can you in Ireland do to try and make sure that this kind of conflict does not take place?
Thank you, George. Mr. President, again, 3 quite different questions, and I have to ask you to answer as short as possible, but the floor is yours.
All right. Well, may I just say first in response to Fiona's question, I think it's very important that that ad hoc committee came from the Assembly itself. The questions affecting the efficacy of the Council of Europe and the possibilities for the future of the Council of Europe are not technical. They are more than technical in a way. They are about how, as I have said, the triumvirate can in fact interact with each other. I do think that it would help enormously to make, for example, with the school system and the need in relation to communications. I think the idea of having advocacy groups explaining and relating to people of all ages is very, very important. The difficulty about it is that those of us who spent our lives, it's 53 years since I first stood for election, unsuccessfully, but those of us who believe in many cases must value parliaments, but parliaments are not simply you don't prepare parliamentarians. Parliamentarians are hearing and listening and representing. And that's why your report it was so important. In relation to our dear friend from Hungary, I think that we must remember when Ireland joined the United Nations, one of the areas into which it distinguished itself was in work against non-proliferation. And I have to say, when I was an active parliamentarian myself, I opposed very much the extension of nuclear capacity anywhere. I think, as well as that, we cannot go on and replace our discussion with others with threats of militarism. There is a report in the European Union on the future of Europe. Well, the future of Europe is not simply to be a military site. I think that it's very, very important that we be. However, we have to deal with immediate things now, and as I said, so do so without impunity. But we mustn't lose our perspective. I do think, too, in relation to the question of the future of Europe, this tension between the European Union and the Council of Europe must be ended. But what I have said in my speech, you can draw, it was very clear, the conclusion, is that when it comes to a clash between economics in the narrowest sense and human rights, economics trumps human rights. That's where we all have to speak out and to simply say, that's why I believe, if we could imagine in relation to dealing with these issues of famine and hunger, even issues in Europe in relation to poverty, if we had a floor of universal basic services, you could then speak about the extras after that. But this is, I very much share the view that the weapons expanding, particularly in the invocation of the possible use of nuclear weapons in response is a whole terrible new nadir to sink to. I think in relation to the legislation that is before the House of Commons and this Scotsman, I could tell you know I am a non-executive president, and I'm reminded occasionally by people about that, but I'm very careful about all of that. But I did say to you about it, it is, whether you are wherever you come from in the United Kingdom or wherever it is, that you benefit from the European Convention on Human Rights. Anything that interferes with the European Convention on Rights damages not only us in Ireland, it damages people in the United Kingdom, it damages people in Europe. I do think it is incredibly important. That's why, and indeed our friends in the United States and Canada, Australia and others are very, very well aware of the stress that we place on the Convention on Human Rights as part of the Good Friday Agreement. But equally, I do think it is, I'm just reporting what is on the ground, available to everyone. Anyone who has some relative who's been killed, murdered, anyone who has been injured, well, from whatever part of Northern Ireland, none of them want a blanket immunity given to those who are responsible. And I do think, we need to get to a better place. Half my family lives in England. I'm one of the admirers. I think that, for example, the British National Health Service was one of the great achievements of humanity. And we benefited from it, everybody benefited from it. And my hope is that we all get to a better place. I think it is possible. As a head of state, dealing with the head of state, I might say relationships are excellent in relation to understanding. And I pay tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II for the knowledge that she amassed, the care that she had, the gestures that she made, and indeed that King Charles III is making. I think this will all be very, very helpful and may it permeate through all the ranks of politics.
Mr. President, may I thank you for all the words of wisdom that you have shared with us and the answers that you have given to our questions. I think we appreciated it all very much. I wish you a good continuation of your visit, and once again, bring our condolences tomorrow to the families and the beloved ones of those who died in this catastrophe. But once again, thank you very much for your grand lecture. We will reread it and we will study it. Thank you very much.